Hey up everybody, my name's Joshua Morrison, director of Johnny Moz's Lessons in Confidence. Today I want to talk a little bit about music theory and how you can learn music theory by making music. You don't need to sit down and study it, right, for hours and hours and hours every day, just so you can come out with some knowledge of music theory, right? It'd be like learning the alphabet, right? You spend ages and ages reciting the alphabet to yourself, memorizing it, figuring out what the alphabet is, right? All 26 letters of them and the punctuation, right? And then you've just got all these letters and symbols and numbers, but with no way of arranging them, right? What you should do instead, I think, is learn some words. Figure out, I don't know, goose, blueprint, square, right? So you learn those words, right? All of those words use different letters, right? So you can take those letters and go, right, so that SQ, yeah, sku, okay. And then BLU, blue, sku, blue, sku. Okay. And then you kind of take those lessons and you learn a few more words. Tree, branch, leaf. It's all tree themed, isn't it? Right? And then you sort of figure out how those kind of correlate and how the sounds of them work together, and then you learn more words. And that's, the idea of learning language and stuff, right? I'm not necessarily saying that's the best way to learn a language in a literal sense, but if you translate that over to music theory, the equivalent would be learning a song, sort of going, right, so that song is kind of doing this, dan 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 dan. What's that? Oh, it's a riff, okay. And then there's this other song that goes, and you go, okay, so that's a melody, right? It's not a riff. Why is it not a riff? Because it doesn't dum 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 its way through the thing. It's so that implants in your head that melody equals and riff equals dun dun dun, right? So you kind of got that, and then you try and figure out your own understanding of what music is, right? How do you think of music? Do you think of it in beats and tempo and that kind of thing? Or is it just a pure, just like from the mind to the strings or the keys kind of thing, right? And I do think it's important to learn, to play to a click, right? But at the same time, I don't think that it should be that you're trying to force yourself in the beginning to learn to play to a click, because what's important is to just have fun playing the thing and make stuff that you like making. If you want to make stuff, if you don't want to make stuff and you just want to learn an instrument for the sake of learning an instrument, then go for it. But if you want to make music, right, you need to know how to play the instrument. If you want to know how to play the instrument, then you need to know the music theory, right? And that kind of is the default trajectory. You learn a bit of music, you get an instrument, you learn music theory, you apply the lessons from the music theory into making music, right? I would rather just make a load of music and then take the lessons from that music and then go into Google, see what's going on, try and research what am I doing here? Like, and I don't mean like literally Googling everything, but just have a sit down, listen to your music and kind of go, what am I doing with this? What's happening here? There's this sort of thing that goes a little bit faster. What's that? Is that a tempo change? Is that a time signature change? What's a time signature? How do they work? They've got two numbers, right? Well, how do they work? The top one is for bars, the top one's for beats and the bottom one's for bars, or whatever, right? And so you kind of think through things like that, and I think that's the best way of learning, right? So there's this YouTube channel called Signals Music Studios, right? And I've been watching him ever since I started playing guitar, right? And when I first started watching him, I had no idea what his videos were about. I had no idea what he was talking about. He'd be like, oh, and then we just take this C-sharp Dorian thing and we transpose it into E Locrian. I'd be like, whoa, slow down, Nelly. What does that mean, right? And then you would try and find one that is more at my pace, and I go, right, so if you want to play an A minor chord, you put this finger here, you put this finger here, you put this finger here, and you go slow. And they somehow managed to make it even slower than that, right? So there wasn't really an in-between. So I just sort of went for the stuff that was too advanced for me. I like to throw myself in the deep end in that regard. And yeah, after a certain point, the videos just started making sense to me, and I just knew what he was talking about. I never researched music theory, I never learnt music theory, but apparently I know it, right? So I figured it out somehow. The same way that you didn't learn English, or maybe if it's a second language, but you didn't learn your native language by sitting down and researching it and like figuring it out in that kind of way. You obviously ask, a couple questions and, you're curious about stuff, right? I'm not saying just, sit blindly in the face of all information, but I just mean you didn't sit down and study your native language. You learned how to do it by speaking it. And as you spoke it more and more and more, you got more and more fluent with it and you were able to use more words and there was a certain point when I figured out how to use a semicolon in a sentence. And I was like, wow. And I had a phase where I just started using semicolons all over the place. And then I kind of cooled it off, right, from doing that. And, you can kind of do that with everything. With the subject of this video, music theory, you can do it with that as well. And I really encourage you to. Don't worry so much about, music theory courses or music theory this or music theory that, right? Fuck music theory, who gives a shit? It's just, all music is a load of sounds at the end of the day, compiled on top of one another in a linear order, right? And that's good, I like that. I like sitting down and going on a bit of a journey with some music, right? And if you want to make your own music, and you want to make as good music as you can possibly make, you are going to need to know some level of music theory, most likely. Not necessarily, but most likely you will. And to do that, rather than sitting down and studying, which doesn't really give you any kind of product at the end of it, why not just make a load of music? Who cares if it's garbage? Who cares if it's shit? Just make all of this music where you have no understanding of music theory, and then as you do it more and more and more and more, you'll get better at making the music, and then in turn, you will start to connect the dots in the questions that you have around, how does this sort of key here work? How do I learn this scale? How do I play this chord? How do I go from this chord to this chord without hurting my finger? That kind of stuff. You'll get better at answering those questions yourself, rather than relying on some mystical fucking language that doesn't exist. Because it's not like music theory is a real thing, like speaking English. Obviously you can sight read and stuff. I can't sight read. I could learn that at some point in terms of like a real skill. And I would certainly say that this video isn't really like about, say, classical music and stuff like that, which is a lot more academic. This is probably more about simple kind of music and stuff like that. But, I've made songs that incorporate weird time signatures and polyrhythms and stuff, and I've done it entirely by accident, right? And then I've taken what I've figured out, gone, oh, that's a polyrhythm. Oh, okay. And then I've applied it to another thing, right? More time signatures than polyrhythms. I've only done it, I don't like polyrhythms that much. I gave up on them. But I really like time signatures, particularly in metal. I like doing like, 4/4, dun, 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 and then kind of doing like a 3/4, dun, 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 dun. I'm trying to do it in my head, do the click track in my head. It's quite difficult actually. But yeah, you kind of get the point that I'm making, is that you will get more tools from your experience of making music, and then you can apply those tools in new ways. And once you get bored of those tools, they go back in the toolbox and you get a new tool. I've been using hammers for ages, but I could probably do it with a screwdriver. Right, well, I bought a screwdriver, it's a Phillips head screwdriver, brilliant. But there's all these sort of flathead nails sat here, screws sat here, what am I gonna do with them? I've used the Phillips screwdriver a load recently, I'm getting bored of it, I'm gonna go buy a flathead screwdriver. And so on and so forth, until you're operating a chainsaw and you actually know how to use it, and you know how to use everything in conjunction with it, because music theory is an all-encompassing thing that makes you better at making music. And yeah, that's kind of all that this video is about, is just trying to use the tools to your advantage without becoming a slave to those tools, right? Because you could sit there for years and years and years studying music theory. People do. They study music theory for years and years, and they have nothing to show for it other than knowing like what a Locrian harmonic fucking thing is. I don't know what that is. I don't care. Right? But I've made a load of music. That is what I care about. Not, and I've certainly made a couple songs in Locrian. They're not very good because Locrian is a shit scale to play in. Right? But at the same time, it's important to try and push your envelope, try and get outside your comfort zone, try and do stuff that's not natural feeling to you, right? I don't tend to gravitate towards songs that are in major. That doesn't mean I'm never going to make a song in major in my life. I want to make some songs in major, and whenever I do, I kind of enjoy it because it's a little bit different for me, and I try new things, and it causes me to expand my horizons, right? And that's very, very, very important. It's just to keep trying to expand your horizons, do new things, experiment with the form, see what you can do to push yourself further and further, rather than staying complacent and just studying endlessly for a test you'll never take. So that's going to be the video. Thank you very much for watching. Leave your comments in the thing below about, you know, what do you think of this? Do you think this is a load of shite? Do you think that music theory is actually really, like, you should study it first and then come back into it? If you do, why do you think that? If you don't, why do you think that? And yeah, that's going to be it from me. Ta-ta, love you all. Don't know why I said either of those things. Well, I do love you all. Aww. And yeah, but I don't say ta-ta though. I can't just end it like that. That's bollocks, isn't it? That's a terrible ending. So yeah. I haven't got anything else to say. I'm just going to stand here until the video stops.